What's going on, y'all? 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 It's David or Dawhveed. Oh, man. What's up, y'all? It's David or Dawhveed with my new series for Kingdom of Heroes Tactics War, where I'll be picking out units and breaking them down piece by piece. I'll be talking a little bit about their skills, what areas of the game you can use them in, covering different builds that they can use and showing them in action with those builds, and then finally I'll go over their best friends, which are just units that work really well alongside them. As you guys probably already can tell from the title of the video and the thumbnail, this first video is going to be about Mary. Okay, I'm just kidding. I'll be covering Muspell, mainly because he's the first 6-star that I recommend to newer players, even some like mid-game players, mainly because he's a farmable 4-star, and because he's a crazy good XP farmer for Conqueror stages. So Muspell's first skill, Fireball, is a single target nuke for 2 hexes away. If he crits using this skill, his second skill gets its cooldown reduced by 1 turn, but if he kills the enemy with Fireball, it resets his second skill's cooldown entirely. Skilling up this skill just adds extra damage, which isn't so bad because more damage equals higher chance to kill the enemy to reset your skill 2 cooldown. His skill 2, Mind Focus, is a self-casting buff that resets his skill 3 cooldown, increases his attack, and gives him an extra turn to act. This is mainly what enables Muspell to be crazy good because he can just reset all of his skill cooldowns within a couple of turns and just decimate the enemies. Sometimes using this skill and using your skill 1 is best because you'll get the attack boost for skill 1, and if you kill the enemy it will reset your skill 2 to use again the following turn. Scaling this skill up just reduces its cooldown, but it doesn't really matter because killing someone with skill 1 reduces it entirely. A better skill up for this would be something like increases attack for an extra turn, or like if it gave you increased speed as well. His third skill, Inferno, is Muspell's bread and butter. It's an AoE nuke that does increased critical damage. It also gets increased damage based on how many buffs you have, so along with your skill 2 that resets this cooldown and gives you another turn with an attack boost, this skill gets buffed by not only that attack boost, but also a boost in the damage from the fact that the attack boost is an active buff. Skilling up Inferno just adds more useful damage as well as reduces its cooldown by 1 turn. And finally, his last skill is his leader skill, which increases all allies' attack by 30%. This is the icing on the cake for Muspell, making him potentially viable in all areas of the game because it's a universal skill, meaning it works for every single unit no matter where you're at. So now onto the best areas to use him. I for one don't think you can really go wrong using him in like anywhere just because he's so good. His leader skill potentially fits like every single place, but there are some places where he does shine more than others. I for one think that he's probably best being used as a farmer, which is why I recommend him to people all the time. Just take him in a Conqueror 1-3 with 130 plus speed and watch him go to town. But don't blink because you might miss it. He could also potentially farm higher Conqueror levels, but to do that he'll need Vampire runes. Muspell is also a complete beast in tower because of his leader skill and nuke capability. Combine him with any other nuke unit and he can speed through your tower farming really fast. My favorite place to use him though is for arena offense. I've broken through so many cheesy defenses with Muspell on a nuke team that it's crazy. Just buff him up and watch him go. As far as builds go, I have 3, well, maybe 2.5 viable builds for you guys. The first one, the one that I use the most, is the standard like charge or explosion set and havoc build. This one is just like your standard nuking and farming set. Build some speed for him if you're farming with him, or speed tune him with your other units like I have to use this set for arena. His second build is a vampire build for farming, which requires a little more stats because you're sacrificing the charge buff for healing. Make sure you have high speed, high crit, high attack, and some kind of bulk, and you can pull off farming high Conqueror levels stages with this madman. Now the last build, I admit, is really memey. I've only tested it once and I honestly don't recommend this unless you want your friends to wedgie you.
Your pants are falling down.
Really?
I'll fix it.
So the build is triple revenge or double revenge and broken or double revenge havoc. And the idea is that you revenge the ranged attacks from the enemies and reduce your skill 2 cooldown every time you revenge proc, making it so your skill 3 is back up as soon as possible. Good luck using this one. And now I'm going to jump into what's going to be my favorite part of this video series. It's going to be who are the best friends of the unit that I'm covering, in this case Muspell. There's actually going to be quite a few of them, so I'm going to try my best to be as brief as possible while getting my point across. So first, Jahra is completely insane with Muspell. As long as you have some sort of like other buffer on your team, Jahra can extend the buff and give Muspell multiple turns of having a buffed Inferno. Pair this duo with like an attack buffing unit that goes before them and your Muspell will be cracked. She can also heal him for like a little more prolonged fight. Hotaru actually seems like one of the more obvious choices here, mainly because of her leader skill and nuking capabilities. The math is pretty simple here. Muspell's leader skill gives the two of them 30% attack buff and her leader skill gives them a 45% attack buff. Aside from that, Hotaru just has an incredible skill set for nuking alongside Muspell and will help him break through tanky units. Bunny is nice because she actually can strip buffs such as defense buff or like an invincibility buff off of enemies before Muspell takes his turn, so he can nuke them without a worry. She also has a chance to give him an attack buff during her turn. Astaroth is also actually farmable, and she can offer Muspell not only a 3-turn attack buff, but also potentially a speed buff, and then also grant multiple continuous recovery stacks on him to buff up his Inferno damage even more. Lakshmi is just completely nuts with Muspell, mainly because of her skill 3. Her skill 3 gives an adjacent ally an extra turn along with an attack buff and debuff immunity, meaning that Muspell cycles between cooldowns, so this gives him another chance to kill with his skill 1, gives him a chance to use his skill 2 to reset his skill 3, or just lets him use his skill 3 with an attack buff and another buff. Lakshmi also heals him on her turn and can even apply 2 more buffs for him, such as defense boost and continuous recovery. Amon is actually very similar to Astaroth in a way that they both just want to give Muspell a ton of buffs to beef up his skill 3 damage. Amon in a single turn can give Muspell a 3-turn continuous recovery buff, a 3-turn increased crit rate buff, and a 3-turn damage reflect buff that will all be back up again by the time that they wear off on him. Amon also helps act as a frontline for Muspell to tank enemies. Apollon is actually one of the better ones to pair with Muspell because his skill 3 gives Muspell an attack, crit, and potentially a speed buff, which will give your Muspell's Inferno the most damage possible out of every buffer unit. He also helps Muspell nuke down enemies, and their leader skills are both interchangeable depending on what enemies that you're facing. Jack is interesting because her leader skill, when fully skilled up, is actually more than Muspell's for PvP, and she can pick off key targets to help him nuke the enemy team. She also has a great attack buff and crit rate buff in the same skill. Apop is nice because instead of buffing Muspell, you debuff the enemies with defense breaks and nuke them soon after. He doesn't bring much else alongside Muspell aside from his leader skill and some PvE content because it's higher than Muspell's. And last but not least, we have Freyja, our favorite free waifu. She just brings a very useful skill 2 that can make Muspell invincible and give him higher speed, which will buff his skill 3 Inferno while keeping him safe. And that, my friends, is going to wrap it up for my first unit breakdown video. Make sure to leave me a comment down below on this video as to what unit you'd like to see next. Please make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video, and that subscribe button and notification bell to support the channel because I appreciate it so much when you guys do that. Make sure to swing on by my Discord, which is going to be up here on screen and even down below in the comments if you have any questions, and I will check you all in my next video. See ya!